I caught up with Curro Holdings CEO Cobus Loubser earlier today, and we spoke about the company's anniversary, allegations of racism, and how he sees the rest of the financial year panning out.
I think we're very proud. Curro is 25 years old this year, and I think we've achieved a lot over those 25 years. But if we talk specifically about this first 6 months, there are various highlights. I think we grew our learner numbers by about 3% on a weighted average basis, and that's in a very challenging economic environment. Revenue increased by 16%, and ultimately our recurring headline earnings increased by 36%. So I think from that perspective, we're very pleased with our performance. I think other highlights would be that our operating margin increased by 1.7%. And then tellingly, and I think a little bit against the grain, we've seen an improvement in our accounts receivable or outstanding accounts book, where parents have certainly, despite the challenging conditions, have done well to pay their accounts and give their child every opportunity. So I think all in all, I think a pretty good set of results for us in this first 6 months.
How do the parents look like? Those who are guidance, those who are responsible for those accounts. We know in the same period last year, we spoke about how tough the economic times are, and with interest rates and inflation high, it hasn't been an easy time for many of them.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be really realistic about it, is that interest rates is nearly 5% higher today than what it was in the first half of last year. That alone, never mind the inflationary pressures on food and energy cost, electricity and the like, has exerted a lot of pressure on families, and so they are under pressure. I don't think there's any doubt over that. If you look at other consumer-orientated operations, retail and banking, for instance, some of the numbers from there is telling, is that consumers are under pressure. So we delighted that we could still grow the overall number of learners, but unfortunately there are a number of learners that we had to terminate accounts for non-payment or for overdue payments, and it's not it's hard for us as educators to do that. But we can't offer a service for free.
Cobus, it's a difficult question to ask when it comes to seeing how Curro has had to deal over the years with isolated incidents of alleged racism. You had to deal with another boss, I think, a week ago, that you had to let go for calling another teacher or colleague the word monkey. A couple of years ago in your Pretoria campus in the East, there were issues there as well. Are these isolated incidents that should be looked in that way, or is there something that Curro is working on to say we may have a problem here?
So these are serious matters. I think the first thing to confirm unequivocally is that Curro has a zero tolerance policy and approach to racism and any other form of discrimination. I think in so far as is it pervasive in an organization, it is not. And it is dealt with very swiftly and fairly with reasonable investigation and process in terms of our protocols and our procedures and so on. So I think in this particular instance, we acted swiftly when we became aware of the matter. It was properly investigated and it was dealt with in the appropriate disciplinary forums, and the individual was dismissed accordingly based on that process. So I think it's regrettable, but we have a zero tolerance policy to this, and that's what it is. It's not pervasive to Curro.
How do you see the second half panning out for the group?
We expect a relatively balanced kind of distribution of earnings for the year. Our business, I think, is relatively predictable, and so it should be. So relatively balanced distribution of earnings. And then when it comes to cost, I think it's something which is well managed and contained. And if you look at this particular period, we saw an increase in revenue ahead of the increase in costs. And if you look closely at the kind of drivers of costs, and so overall costs were up 15%, overall revenue up 16%. And if you look closely at the drivers of cost, the number of learners, additional learners on a like-for-like basis, and the additional schools in our portfolio acquired are key drivers of that cost over and above inflation. And then on top of that, we saw a 31% increase in our ancillary revenue streams. But that does come with a concomitant cost of execution. So that in itself also pushed cost up a little bit. And then, of course, there's the extent to which we have to create some backup electricity solutions and fill them with diesel and so on. So that unfortunately also added a little bit of cost.